Well, I was born in Syracuse. I'm from the east side,
What year?
1968. Is my year birthday mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1968. Actually, before I moved to where the story begins, I lived on Pine Street. And just to give you a kind of overview, it was old school. My grandmother, uncle, great-grandmother, and my mom and us lived there. We all lived in one big home.
Brothers, sisters?
Yep, brothers and sisters. I have one older brother, one older sister, and two younger sisters. And, you know, things were good. It was a real tight family knit, you know. The whole neighborhood was kind of good. And this was a long time ago, so I'm like, it's kind of vague, you know.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good. Then we ended up moving to Fayetteville, Westmoreland. What they called back then was, let me see, it was Salt Springs. It wasn't Hilltop or Rolling Greens or where they have it now. It was Salt Springs, and it was the projects, you know.
Westmoreland and what?
Fayette Street.
Fayette Street, okay.
Like Westmoreland, Crowley, Fayette.
Gotcha.
All the way to Westcott.
Oh, okay.
Westcott and Fayette all the way to Crowley was like our neighborhood. And, you know, growing up, when we moved up there, it was tough. Like my first week there, I got jumped. You know, that's just the way the neighborhood kids got you into the neighborhood.
How old were you when you moved there?
Six, seven. And I lived there with my great-grandmother. She pretty much raised me. And it was good, and I remember, you know, at a very young age, watching all the big guys hang out right there on the corner, in front of Chief's store. And that's where everybody, you know, got out of school or ended up meeting. And, you know, we were right there on Fayette and Westmoreland, so we saw everything. You know, we can look out our window, and one of my first memories up there was like a week after I got there. I remember seeing this old guy get shot right in front of the store. You know, my grandmother was like, "Oh my God," you know.
What was the store again?
It was called Chiefs.
Chiefs?
East Side Market or something like that. We called it Chiefs.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, coming up, I was really, really good in school. Always honor roll, straight A's, you know. Basically, I was a nerd. But I remember...
He says with the Marvel superheroes.
Yeah, right.
That's okay, I got the same stuff.
But a while after, my mom moved up, and with my other brothers and sisters, and they moved down on Dakin in Westmoreland, and so it was kind of weird because I would have to go down to my mother's house and help her clean up the house, and you know, my mom was, you know, she always worked, single mom, 5 kids at the time, and you know, things were tough. And at the time, you know, I didn't recognize like what it's really like to struggle. I remember my life didn't look like what it looked like on TV. You know, it just didn't add up. Like, you know, we watching all this stuff, and she would have to go to work, and she'd be gone early in the morning and wouldn't get back till late. So by the time she got home, we had all this stuff we had to do before we could even go outside. Like, you know. And I remember, you know, down there when I used to go down to my mom's house, you know, across the street was Westmoreland Park and all the ball players and stuff, and it was a good summer. But I could tell you, all my friends were, it seemed like we were close because it was always a story of I couldn't, you know, get new sneakers, or I couldn't get the stuff that a lot of other kids had in school. And, you know, I remember they used to do free lunch, and you know, because the people in the neighborhood just couldn't afford that kind of stuff. So it was like that, and we didn't have the best of everything, but we were pretty well off. My mom was, she worked hard, and I remember we had one of the best apartments in the complex because she just really took care of it, and we were really responsible, or else,
Right.
you got what. But fast forward and coming up, as I began to get older, I remember my mom used to make me run all these errands all the time. It was like I just had to always do something, and my brothers and sisters would go out and play and stuff like that. But I was one of the ones that always had chores, and and so I can remember now where like a lot of the resentments began. Feeling like because I stayed with my great grandmother, how I didn't really mesh with my brothers. So we loved each other. Don't get me wrong. We're still tight, but like that feeling of alienation and.
You were the only one who stayed with your grandma.
Right. So when I came home, like when I came to my mother's house, I felt like a black male Cinderella. It was, and I didn't know then, but I recognize now why. And that's why my apartment is trying to stay clean now. But I remember the first time I began to change from this nerd guy to something else, and she sent me to the store up at Chiefs one time. Well, we've been living there for a long time, and by this time, of course, everybody knew each other. And she sent me to the store, and one of the older kids, knew I was upset because my mother was running me like crazy, and he said, "Hey man, try this." And I took my first hit of a joint. This is before blunts ever came out. I took my first hit of a joint. My brother smoked weed a lot. And I always would say, I'm never touching that. I'll never do that. I'm too smart for that. But when I took that, I knew at that instant that, my life was going to change. I knew that this is what I was looking for. This was going to take the pressure off. I'm not going to be this nerd anymore. I am now officially cool. And this was like at 14. Shortly after.
Oh, well, now when you say you were a nerd and that you got good grades, did you know like why you were doing it? Did you feel like
I
you were doing it for like what was the specific reason?
I wanted approval from her mother. I wanted her to say, good job, I love you, and she was just too busy, and so. I wanted her to say, you're the smartest. I got the best grades out of us. At the time, my older brother and sister. My older brother kind of, he left school and he began working. My older sister, she was okay in school, but she wasn't really good. So I wanted to be the first one to go to college. I wanted to be an architect. And so throughout school, I took all these advanced Regents classes, and English, math, sciences, and everything, Spanish, and I was on clubs, English club, and math club, and all this stuff, even science club. So yeah, I was a nerd. But I was what you want to call a cool nerd, right?
Gotcha.
So I had friends from everywhere, mostly because of the neighborhood. And so yeah, it's true. I was seeking acceptance, and I really felt like I didn't get it. I wanted to be a part of, because at this time, I wasn't familiar with who my father was. I didn't meet him until I was 14. So coming up, it was tough on my mom, and she was real hard on me, probably harder on me, I thought, than the rest, because she just probably didn't like my dad. So I looked just like him. God bless the dad. And so I was steadily seeking more from her, and so I began to like use all these big words and read these big books, and get good grades in school, and my behavior was excellent, and I was always excelled in my classes, but when I took that hit of that joint, though, all that changed.
And how old were you when that happened?
14.
14.
14. It was early 14. It was like right in the springtime. In our neighborhood, they had buildings where you could sit in the staircases and you could see out and two, they had just rebuilt it. Before that, it was just all hallways, but they rebuilt it. You could see out into the streets, and he was sitting on the staircase where you could see out, and that's when he motioned me in. And he was one of my friends, my brother's, friends. So he was like, 4 or 5 years older. And when I came back from home with that bread, I remember like going into my room and just really started reevaluating what I wanted to do. And of course, and it was the era of hip hop, and at that time, man, a lot of things changed in our neighborhood. Then cocaine and crack to us was taboo. Like, you use that stuff and you will be addicted instantly. And I was like, oh, well, I don't want to be addicted instantly to nothing, so I'm not going to do that. But a while later, as hip hop came into the scene, my attire began to change. I began to evolve. And before the end of that year, I remember leaving home. So I've been on my own since I was 14 years old. I went to my friend's house because his mom let him smoke weed and drink. And so it was like, that's what I wanted to do. And so throughout that time, I attempted to try to go to school. I ended up failing 9th grade. I remember that. I failed 9th grade because I did not go that following year. And I began to get into a lot of trouble. I began to do crimes. I used to rob cars, steal cars. In order to eat and get new clothes, or because no one else was buying it for me. I was on my own, so I felt that's what I had to do. And every once in a while I go to school. I don't know that. I remember about 17 years old. Before that, even before like 15, 16 years old, I remember we were down in the teen center, and it really became real to me what kind of neighborhood I lived in. We were in the teen center, and my best friend's older brother stabbed and killed another man in the teen center. And that dude that he killed was my brother's best friend. So this was a big family conflict and feud right now. And so this is the kind of stuff I grew up in. It was always violence. It was always drugs, needles. It was a lot of single moms, and a lot of guys. It was a lot of dudes in our neighborhood. So the mothers were really not able to handle us young guys. And so when you're talking about graffiti and rap, and in the age where gangs became prevalent, cliques. We used to get a little clique and a crew, and of course we'd rap and dance and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it was about who was getting their hustle on. And at that stage of the game, everything was fair. But I still had a grip on my using, right? I could go to work or buy new clothes and still get high and be fresh and clean and do that, but
It was still just pot at that point. It was still.
Oh no, it was alcohol too. I used to drink 40 ounces, and it was cool to always be drinking and smoking weed. Everybody did it, so
right.
We all get together and team up, and everybody put whatever they had in, and we used to skip school and just drink and smoke all day. Drink and smoke all day long. By 10th grade, 11th grade, I realized that, this is not going to work for me, so I better get my butt back in school. So I got back in school, and they told me that, well, you're going to need to go to school all the way into your senior year in order for you to graduate on time, so I did that. Throughout that process, I got kicked out a couple of times. Stole the teacher's purse, got caught, tried to use a credit card, didn't know nothing about it. And they kicked me out of school and put me in an alternative school called Prescott. When I got to Prescott, of course it was reprimanded, so I did really good. I stopped getting high for a while. I was showing up to school every day, and I come to find out that I could write plays. And so we did The Christmas Story, and I wrote the play and performed in it as The Ghost of Christmas Past. And it was awesome, and I really knew that, that was something I liked. But it didn't last. It didn't last. When school was out, I went back to the old crew, began to do more heinous things. We started we started selling weed. And in the crew, we started doing a lot more crimes. We started carrying guns because everybody in the neighborhood had a gun. And if you was from another neighborhood and you came to our neighborhood, you're probably likely to get shot or stabbed. And I remember it was only, no offense, but I remember it was only a couple of white dudes that can come down to our neighborhood. Chris Martin and Phil Martin, coolest cats you could meet. All these dudes was awesome, and they were accepted readily. It's not like we didn't want people to come in, but no one this ever did. So when they didn't have no fear of coming in and just being themselves, and they liked what we liked, so it was nothing for them to come in our neighborhood and hang out with us, and the whole neighborhood loved them. Shortly after that, Phil Martin died in an overdose of opium. We found they robbed this dope dealer, and I remember this. They robbed this dope dealer, and they thought it was cocaine, but it was heroin. And so he sniffed it and sniffed too much and overdosed. Later on that month, they found his brother, and they beat his brother up real bad for taking that. He's luckily to be alive today. Chris Martin, he's real cool. You know. So my mom ended up moving to Buffalo, and this is where things got real rough for me. I was in and out of jail for petty larceny, assault, truancy, and I was still living with my friend, and I'd work and go to school, and when my mother moved to Buffalo, she asked me, throughout this whole time from 14 to then, she never came to look for me. She never wanted to know if I was okay. I was a block or two away, and I just never saw her. When I see my sisters, I ask them how I was doing, my younger sisters and stuff like that. I run into my brother, and, it was nothing. I was on my own. So when she's getting ready to move to Buffalo, she had already got married to my stepdad, and he was awesome. They've been together for 30-something years now. And he was a good dad. He tried to show me right. He was kind and patient. He was that father I didn't have. But it was too late for me. I was already rebelling. She came and said, well, look, Rich got to stay here to work with the Syracuse Housing. I got this job with Gold Dome Bank. It was a great opportunity for her. My little sister's life was about to turn around. We were about to get out of the hood. And so I told her first that no, I'm not going, I'm staying here. I'm with my crew, we doing all these things. And I got in trouble again. I went to jail again. She didn't come see me. And right before she left, she came and saw me and said, well, look, her and the probation officer said, look, you can go with your mother. We'll transfer probation there. You finish out school in Buffalo, and you can get off probation. And I was on 5 years probation at 17, 16. For petty larceny, the first 6 months we got to Buffalo, I got kicked out of the house. And I'm in a strange city. First time ever coming out of Syracuse, and I didn't have nowhere else to go, so I commenced to getting with a couple of crews, and I slept in buildings that I can't even describe to you. The kind of buildings you ride by in the city and you see all the windows are broken out, and, with pissy mattresses in the buildings, and people in the buildings at night with candlelights, shooting up, drug bags everywhere. And throughout the day, I still had some attire and some gear, like, I could be real cool and look like that to the day, but at night, when I went into this building, I would get high with these people, and I was introduced to crack cocaine. When I got introduced to that, my life had altered again. And so, when you're talking about like the poverty and the way this stuff infiltrates neighborhoods and systems, it started like from what I saw growing up when we moved in that neighborhood, where you had to all of a sudden have this persona. Either you man up or you get killed. It's pretty much. And so that had to be one of the reasons why if I didn't do crimes or if I didn't roll with the crew, you know, I probably would have got beat up and they would have probably went after my family. That's how it was. So we needed to all mesh as a neighborhood, and it's like the whole neighborhood was a gang, you know. And so, you know, of course, I played football, basketball, gymnastics in high school. Things were going good, but when I got to Buffalo, I stopped. I truly believe I could have probably been in the pros for either one, but with the drugs, with the lifestyle, I gave it up. So that was a dream right there. My architectural drawing, gave it up. When I got to Buffalo, I started going to school, and I got with this girl, and I got her pregnant at 17. And so at this stage of the game, I said to myself, well, you know, I got a son coming. And so I went and got my GED. So I'm talking about like a guy that's, was, you know, valedictorian in my class in well, 84 to getting a GED. And, you know, that was a big impact on me, and I began to get real angry. I began to see that life was, you know, not a game.